I would like to take a moment here to pause in my analysis of the steps to talk about what are, in my opinion, the three fundamental attitudes of recovery, which is acceptance, gratitude, and honesty. These attitudes are profound, and I am insecure in my ability to do them justice. These attitudes must be adopted and practiced from the very beginning of recovery. They are also the subject of habit. We get better at them the more we practice them. They are also the fruit of recovery, as we are able to be grateful and have acceptance and to be honest in a much more profound way after we have practiced the steps. I believe that every relapse can be traced to a failure in one of these attitudes. It is these attitudes that define the fourth dimension of existence, that give us a life that is second to none. So far in this paper, I have been very theoretical, um, and it is my hope that these ideas expressed here will be made concrete by my readers finding these ideas congruent with their own lives and experience. But in my discussion of acceptance, I would like to start with some concrete examples that throw light on the nature of acceptance. And hope I am able to distill some useful principles out of these examples that will help my listener to be more accepting in their life. I would like to begin with an argumentum ad absurdum, which is a Latin phrase for arguing to the absurd. It is a method of debate where if someone offers an irrational argument, you follow the argument to its conclusion, and if its conclusion is absurd, you disprove the argument. This story is lack of acceptance brought to its gross conclusion. I sponsored a man, and when I first met up with him, he told me he was in rehab because his family held an intervention and told him they would no longer have anything to do with him, and his wife would divorce him unless he went to rehab. He told me his daughter was instrumental in organizing the intervention and that she was behind the threat of divorce. I asked him about his drinking history, and he told me he consumed about a handle of vodka a day. Um, I asked him how his drinking affected his family, and he said that it didn't. He said nobody knew. He informed me he was a good husband and a good father. When I when I heard this, I chuckled to myself, and I said, "This guy needs to do a fourth step." Well, he did a fourth step and completed a fifth step with me, and he graduated from the rehab that he was at. On the day he graduated, his wife served him with divorce papers. He responded by buying a shotgun and murdering his daughter and ending his own life. What a disgusting display of lack of acceptance. But it was not the divorce per se that was the issue. Something deeper was happening. He had an image of himself in his own mind that he was a good husband and a good father, and the divorce was not congruent with that image. He couldn't accept that he was not a good husband or a good father. His ego was assaulted, and he responded with murder. So, what I take from this is that the issue of acceptance isn't not an external fact, it's an internal one. When someone is struggling with acceptance, they need to ask themselves, what does this say about me? What does this mean about me? What is the image of myself that this event is not congruent with? And that is what they should focus their acceptance on. This principle will become clearer when we consider the fourth step. Now, I would like to give an example of what acceptance means to me. Um, when I was a child, I had a stepfather who was abusive. He used to abuse me. He was a bully. He would torment and terrorize me. He made my life a living hell. This happened for 5 years. For example, he would often get in my face and threaten me. He would get in my face and say that if I ever disobeyed him, I'd better be ready for a fist fight. He said if I ever thought I was man enough just to let him know and the fight would be on. He would tell me that I was his enemy and that your enemy is someone you fought with. I was around 10 at the time. He was threatening to fistfight a 10-year-old child. What a big man. All I wanted was a father who would love me. When my mother finally left him, I was very angry. I can't express how angry I was. I suffered an injustice and I was angry. This was the emotional backdrop to my decision to start using drugs as a teenager. But now I am not angry. I have accepted what happened to me, and I have peace around the issue. I have forgiven the man. I do not wish ill on my stepfather. He was a sad, broken man, and I hope he finds peace. I am not broken. He didn't break me. I suffered for a time, I endured, and like all suffering, it came to an end. So, how was I able to come to this peace? One of the most important things I can say about acceptance is this: acceptance is not just a blind acceptance of facts, acceptance is contingent, meaning my acceptance is dependent on certain truths of the universe and the life of man. And outside of these truths, acceptance is absurd and impossible. What I write here is not the only truths that operate with acceptance, but these are the ones that I understand. As you read this, I invite the reader to think about acceptance in their own life and what makes that acceptance possible. As I have said before, it is a fact that order prevails in the universe. The motion of the earth and the sun and the other heavenly bodies, the function of planets, the function of plants, the instincts of animals, the ecosystems they inhabit are all ordered. So my question is this: the hand of man has a purpose, the eye of man has a purpose. Is not the life of man subject to order and purpose? Or is the life of man unique in the universe in its tragedy and absurdity? No. The principle of order in the universe incorporates even the free actions of men. No one can escape this order, for their very efforts to would be incorporated in that order they attempt to flee from. And though it is a hard pill to swallow, it is a fact that principle of order incorporates suffering and death, even the suffering and death of children. This idea is empowering more than I can express. It means that I am not a victim. Evil does not have the final say. For every evil act, there is a greater good that comes from it, a good that there is no escape from. This goodness is so powerful that it doesn't hinder evil. Instead, evil is allowed to exhaust itself in this universe, and in the end, it will be found to be impotent. In my opinion, this idea is so powerful that it imparts the believer with a type of invincibility. So, the question of what is the purpose of my abuse as a child? I don't know, nor do I need to. Atoms worked just fine before man discovered them. I just have an attitude that no matter what evil has happened or is happening to me, I stubbornly believe that goodness and order will be victorious. This idea makes acceptance possible in my life today. I would like to analyze a statement of Socrates, which contains another idea that helps me have acceptance. This statement is shocking and profound and summarizes human morality. The backdrop of this statement was that Socrates, a just and innocent man, is about to be unjustly put to death for his pursuit of wisdom. And before he died, he said this: "No evil can happen to a good man." He said he is not angry with his condemners, for they have done him no harm. What? This statement revolutionizes how we think of good and evil and what it means to be a man. It is a statement about power and what is true power in this world. To have enough money to get by is good, even to have wealth. To be destitute is an evil. To have friends and family is good. To be slandered and abandoned is evil. To have property is a good. To be robbed is an evil. To have freedom is good. To be unjustly incarcerated is an evil. To be happy and at peace is good. To be frightened and angry is not. No one can argue with this. But for Socrates, none of these things were good or evil. True goodness is what you are, your being, not what you have. Good and evil is found in the soul, not the body. This statement clarifies the purpose of a man. Man's purpose is found in his soul, is found in being a good man, not in circumstances or even emotions. Can be good and unhappy. This statement is extremely empowering, for now the purpose of my life is in my power. Being wealthy or being unjustly incarcerated may not be in my power, but being a good man is. In fact, it's the most empowering idea I know, for the soul is inviolable. I may be victimized and subject to injustice, but no one can take my goodness from me. In fact, when someone commits evil against me, it is really themselves they have harmed by their injustice. Although my stepfather had power over me, in the end he was powerless to take my goodness from me. And in the end, the greater evil was what would happen to him through his injustice. I would like to make one final point about acceptance. The first is probably the most important thing I could say about acceptance. Because acceptance works contrary to the emotions of desire and fear and puts our emotions in order, it affects integrity. I can't repeat this enough. The name of the game is integrity. The problem that leads to alcoholism is lack of integrity. Therefore, the solution must affect integrity. And my final point is this: the pinnacle of acceptance is not acceptance of external facts, it's acceptance of self. When someone can say that everything is as it should be inside, this doesn't mean that we have no character defects, that we have no emotional or mental problems. It means that by the grace of God, I am exactly the man I should be today. That the principle of order in the universe operates on the inner man as well as the stars. If lack of acceptance revolves around the self, then acceptance must revolve around the self. This is where serenity comes into the picture. I have heard it said that a grateful drunk will never drink. If this is true, then gratitude holds a place of preeminence in recovery. If, in the end, it is gratitude that will keep the alcoholic from a drink, then the measure of your recovery is the measure of your gratitude. In my opinion, gratitude is the pinnacle of recovery. The purpose of the step work is so you can live a life of gratitude. The step work finds its ultimate fulfillment in gratitude. Why is this? Because gratitude is a sub-virtue of justice. It is an integral part of justice. Gratitude is a manifestation of justice. And without gratitude, justice cannot truly exist. Justice is defined as a habit whereby man renders to each one his due with constant perpetual will. Let's analyze this. First, in order for justice to operate, there must be another. Strictly speaking, you cannot be just with yourself. The virtues of temperance and fortitude order man's relationship with himself. Justice strictly orders man's relationship with others. And because justice deals with the other, it necessarily involves action, which is a manifestation of the will. Therefore, justice perfects our spiritual will. The alcoholic who has been damaged by addiction needs to practice justice to regain freedom of will. Once there is an other, then necessarily a relationship emerges. All the complexity of human relations can be reduced to a fundamental level of equality and inequality. Before there is an act of justice, something must be due to someone. There must be an inequality that needs to be restored. Also, before I can render someone his due, I must recognize that there is an inequality. This is where blindness of alcoholism in general and ingratitude in particular manifests is itself most grossly in blindness to the rights of others. Does gratitude become clear now? It is the grateful man who recognizes some equality between him and his fellows. It is the grateful man who recognizes what he has been given to him that he did not deserve. It is the grateful man who seeks to restore equality between him and others through action. In fact, the measure of the gratitude is the measure of your actions. Gratitude and justice rectify alcoholics' relationship with others. The principal other in the life of the alcoholic is God. Gratitude rectifies our relationship with God by this simple truth. Creation was not an act of justice. God was not fulfilling a debt. He owed nothing. Creation is a free gift that cannot be deserved or earned. Ingratitude and entitlement go hand in hand, yet at the fundamental level of my being, I am not entitled. My being and my life is a free gift. It is gratitude that recognizes this debt, and it is gratitude that seeks to pay it back. Strictly speaking, there is no justice between God and man, because God owes us nothing, and we are powerless to pay back what we owe him. God and man are not equals. Justice between persons begins with an acknowledgement of equality between persons, that the other has rights as I do. Where do the rights of man come from? Much could be said about this that I will not get into. I will simply say this. Justice and gratitude begins with the acknowledgement of the other as a creature of God, that they have God-given rights, that the rights of my fellow is founded on the absoluteness of God. If this is true, then every injustice committed by the alcoholic against his fellow begins with ingratitude, for blindness to the equality of my fellow is the effect, and ingratitude is the cause. If I were to summarize gratitude and ingratitude, addiction and recovery in a single truth, it would be this. We are not entitled to happiness. If this is true, it puts man in a difficult position. The search for happiness is intrinsic. We are hardwired to seek happiness. Many who believe that they can never find happiness will end their lives. We need to be happy, but we are not entitled. If I work a day for my boss, I have earned a paycheck. But what have I done to deserve happiness? What could I do? Does not all the actions of the alcoholic presuppose entitled to happiness? In fact, could we not define the addict as one who tries to wrest happiness by the world by violence? If happiness is not entitled, then what is it? It is a gift. This clarifies all of recovery and man's relationship with a higher power. Although action is necessary for recovery, we cannot merit recovery through our action. We can earn it. We cannot earn it. It is a gratuitous gift. This is why gratitude should define the life of the recovered alcoholic. All his actions and words should stem from gratitude. The life of the recovered alcoholic should be an attempt to pay back an impossible debt. Those who are grateful understand a deep truth about God and man, and this is wisdom. The big book states that the only people who can't recover, are those who cannot be honest with themselves. So honesty is necessary for recovery. The necessary link between honesty and recovery can't be emphasized enough. In fact, in this light, we can define recovery as the ruthless pursuit of truth. Recovery is ruthless because it is pursued without concern for what needs to be sacrificed. Let's begin with dishonesty. Dishonesty and honesty have a necessary relationship with the virtue of justice. Dishonesty wills a relationship of inequality between persons. What is the cause of dishonesty? The chief offender, again, is egoism. It is egoism that creates the illusion of inequality between persons. In fact, I will define egoism as any distortion of the identity that causes a relationship of inequality between persons. So the primary violator of justice comes from egoism. For example, someone might be quite impressed with their intelligence and think because of this they have special rights, like to your girlfriend. Or they may be depressed and hate themselves and think no one is as wretched as them and no one suffers like them. What is the origin of egoism? Egoism is a distortion of reality, and the biggest stumbling blocks for human with reality is our emotions. Our entire emotional life can be summed up as desire and fear. There is something untrue that the egoist desires, and there is something true that the egoist fears. What this is different for everyone. Ego and dishonesty go hand in hand. For in order for egoism to exist, one must be dishonest with themselves at the fundamental level of who I am. Once you are dishonest with yourself, dishonesty with others proceeds rationally. What are the consequences of dishonesty, and what are its relationship with alcoholism? First of all, the dishonest man loathes himself. The big book says that the fundamental idea of God is within each of us. I interpret this to mean that what is right and wrong is hardwired for each of us. For example, do good and avoid evil. Do unto others what what you would have them do unto you. These are premises upon which all our moral reasonings and actions proceed, and these moral ideas are intrinsic to each of us. Aristotle called this synderesis. The dishonest man operates against his conscience. He's operating against his nature and therefore necessarily loathes himself. Another effect is isolation. We are hardwired by the natural law to pursue communion between family and friends, but communion of persons is founded on honesty. Only with honesty can there be genuine giving and receiving between persons. The dishonest man cannot enter into communion with others. He takes, but he does not give himself. He becomes isolated no matter how many are around him. When I willfully lie, I offend my integrity. I divide myself. When one thing is in my mind and another is in my words, I cause internal division. I harm myself more profoundly than any broken bone or bullet wound. If peace is the fruit of internal order, then this dishonest man can have no peace. When someone is dishonest with themselves, something other than reality exists in their mind. Yet our senses are honest. They are always presenting us with reality. Where the real and the unreal meet, there is conflict and suffering. The dishonest man suffers conflict in his mind. Egoism is a result against some truth about the self. The egoist seeks to flee from themselves. The problem that wherever you go, you are with you. How do you flee from yourself? All the preceding are problems that need a solution. For the alcohol, this is found in alcohol. In short, alcohol quenches the pain of egoism. If the problems above are caused by dishonesty and egoism, then honesty is a necessary pillar for the solution. The problem of my ego is solved by the acknowledgement of something greater than myself. Recovery must begin with the acknowledgement that truth is more important than me, more important than my desires and fears, that I have previously, and as I have said previously, the ends which a man pursues define his life, for the end determines the mean. The truth must be recognized as an end of human life. Truth is something I must submit to. Once the end is determined, the mean, honesty, is clarified. Then the purpose of my words and actions become the true pursuit of truth. The dishonest man seeks to enlarge himself by dominion over others through his dishonesty. But man is only truly enlarged by service to something greater than himself. A proverb about human morality that I think is fitting to our discussion is that virtue is its own reward, vice is its own punishment. The most important facet of human morality is what you become by your moral actions. What you become is the true reward above what anyone else can give or take away. The most important thing I can say about honesty is this: honesty creates order. It creates order within and without. The honest man does not loathe himself. He can look at himself in the mirror. The honest man shares in genuine communion with his friends and family. When a man is honest despite his fears and desires, he puts his emotions in the proper place. He effects internal order. And the fruit of order is peace. And the man at peace has no need for a drink.